So I'm inside Kanye's massive New Jersey apartment. The year is 2004 and Jesus Walks is all over the radio. I'm there to interview him for Rolling Stone. We're going to spend the whole day together. We start at noon and we'll hang out all day past his midnight concert at Keene College. So I'm in his house while he's in his bedroom for an hour getting dressed. So I'm walking around, being nosy, being a journalist, looking at what's going on in his house. There's the buffalo leather couch, which I know because he told me, with the kangaroo fur pillows, which I know because later he told me. And then in the corner of the living room on the wall, I see a life-size photograph poster of Kanye. A poster of Kanye on the wall in Kanye's house is the most Kanye thing ever. He's on stage in performance. He looks like this. Okay. I make a note to make sure to ask him about that when he comes out of the bedroom. About half hour later, he comes out, all in polo. One moment after we meet, he asks me what I think of his brand new Jesus piece, this glittering, diamond-encrusted, it was a piece of art. It did have blue aquamarine stones for the eyes, so blue eyes, and yellow diamonds for the hair, so blonde hair, and rubies for the blood going down his face, but that's a different conversation. He made a Jesus piece full of multicolored stones that added up to a blue-eyed, blonde-haired, white Caucasian Jesus. Ugh. He went to the store and designed a white Jesus. That is the colonized mind. One thing about me, I'm not very religious, but I am super curious in the story of the historical Jesus. I think there must have been something amazingly, magnetically charismatic about this man. But okay, let's get real. He was surely not Bjorn Borg. He looked more like Yannick Noah. He looked more like me. He's in Palestine. He's in Egypt. He's brown-skinned with curly hair. And it matters that hundreds of years, Europeans and people like Kanye, trapped with a colonized mind, have prayed to and accepted the vision of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. They're lying to you about the way Jesus looked to perpetuate white supremacy. So in the milliseconds between Kanye asking me, what do you think of my Jesus piece? All of this goes through my head. I thought it was incredibly white-centric and lame for Kanye to have a white Jesus piece. But also, I just met him like 10 seconds ago, and we got to spend the whole day together, and I got to get a good story out of this. But for some reason, I had promised myself that year on New Year's Eve that for the entire year, I would never lie. I would never let anyone make me feel like I couldn't just tell the truth. That was a pledge I made to myself, and in that millisecond, I thought, there's no way I'm breaking my pledge to myself for some Negro with a Caucasian Jesus around his neck. But still, I couldn't be rude. So he asks me, what do you think of my Jesus piece? And all that went through my head. And I said, I thought you thought Jesus was black. All the life just went out of his face. I mean, I'm the first person outside of the crew to see the new $25,000 Jesus piece. And this is a person, Kanye, who desperately needs approval, and I had not given it to him. He stammered and said, yes, of course I think Jesus was black, but also I think this is a beautiful piece of artwork. I don't think it had occurred to him for 1 second that this shouldn't be a Caucasian Jesus. So my thought that should be a black Jesus had rocked his brain. I saw that my comment was having a much bigger impact on him than I had expected. So I moved the conversation away over to, so I see you have a poster of you on the wall. What's up with that? He actually said something brilliant. He said, I have to cheer for me before anyone else can cheer for me. I kind of love that from a young artist who's building himself up, that I have to see the fan experience in me. I have to cheer for me. I have to be my biggest fan before anyone else can come along this ride with me. If you want to be a performing artist of any sort, you have to believe in yourself before anyone else can. And that's what he was talking about. Alas, I had already gotten into his head, and that would impact our entire day together. You'll see why in the 20 years since this interview happened, I have not interviewed Kanye again. About an hour later, we're in the limousine going to Manhattan, when out of nowhere, Kanye says, "Do you think everybody's gonna say what you said about my chain?" I said, "I don't know, man." But it was already eating away at him. He didn't care about me saying, "I don't know." He called his manager and said, "Cancel my next 2 meetings and tell Jacob the jeweler we're coming over right now." Jacob the jeweler was the #1 jewelry designer and salesman in the hip-hop community in the 90s and the 00s. You walk into his space and there's a wall full of Polaroids of him and every rapper you could imagine. At that time, it was like you sign your deal at the label and you take a limo over to Jacob's and you waste some money on a big old chain. And then you're officially a professional rapper. So we walk up in there and Kanye says, "Hey man, I gotta change the stones on this because I'm a conscious rapper and I'm gonna get flack." Jacob yells to someone off stage, "Bring in all the colored stones." For an hour, they sit there taking out the blue stones in his eyes and some of the yellow stones in his hair and trying to put in other brown stones to make it look African American. But when you start with a piece of art that is white-centric, you can't just change the colors to make it Africanoid, to make it black. Everything they tried, it still looked white, just with brown stones. So finally, after an hour, Kanye said, "Forget it. Put it back the way it was, and I'll come back and make an African-American looking one." Jacob says, "Great." We get back in the limo, and I can see Kanye is thinking. He's percolating. He's trying to figure this out. And then he says, "I got it. I know. I'll say it's Grandma's Jesus." Okay. Sure, dog. So about 6 hours later, we're sitting in the back of Kanye's Maybach in the parking lot of Keene College waiting for him to go on. And then he sees across the parking lot, "Oh shit, there's Jay-Z's Maybach. I want to go talk to Jay. I'm going to go show him my chain." Kanye jumps out the Maybach and practically runs over to Jay's. Now, I've interviewed Jay-Z many times at this point. He totally knows who I am. And I am dying to not miss this scene. So I'm kind of running across the parking lot after Kanye so as not to miss a word of this Kanye and Jay-Z conversation. Just before we saw Jay was in the parking lot, Kanye was telling me how he thought of Jay as his Jewish father. I don't know why it had to be a Jewish father. So Kanye jumps in the front passenger seat of the Maybach and leans through the hole in between the front and the back. I'm leaning in through the back window, kind of like half in the car, like the worst little brother ever. But Jay-Z is right there in the passenger seat, and he's like, "I don't care." So Kanye puts his chain out for Jay's approval, and he says, "Do you like my Jesus piece?" And Jay looks at it like, yeah. He's not saying anything, but he's shaking it. Yeah, he's catching the glittering diamonds and all that. Okay. He's responding to how expensive it looks. He's not thinking about the deeper meanings of a white-centric Jesus. That's what I'm there for. So as Jay is shaking his head, I said lightly, "That's a white Jesus." I know how Jay-Z loves to tease, and I know how black folks get when someone's being a little too white-centric. Jay's whole face changed. Oh yeah, that is kinda different. His tone is now like, not feeling it. Kanye says, "That's grandma's Jesus." Jay says, "Nah, you gotta darken that face up. You gotta take out those blue eyes. That's too blonde hair blue-eyed for me. You gotta tuck that in." Kanye said, "I tried to get rid of the blue eyes, but the blue eyes look best." Jay said, "Yeah, that's what they want you to think." Kanye was about to try again, and then Jay was like, "Hurry up and get on stage. I got a party to go to." He gave him the little, "Let's go, boy." Kanye knew what had happened. I had delivered him on a platter to get smacked in the face verbally by Jay-Z, embarrassed right before he's got to go on stage, embarrassed in front of his Jewish father, Jay-Z. And for that, I have been banished. It's been 20 or 21 years, and I have never again gotten to interview Kanye. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, all the things, and comment on what you want me to talk about next.